I am.
Okay, Chris.
All right.
I'm the only friend you've got today.
Okay. Well, we talked yesterday, and I started, and I was telling you, I wrote some stuff down on a note card here, just because I wanted to refresh my memory. I'm assuming we're all here to talk about Harker's Island today, and I thought about this from the teaching perspective, because I was a school teacher and taught social studies. Is that I wanted to just share a little bit, and some of this may be familiar with you, but I used to teach Carter County history unit back in middle school with my middle school kids, and about the time of the exploration of the Americas. Because if you really think about it, the United States of America began, its seed was planted in North Carolina, and the Outer Banks and the Harker's Island area had a part to play in that. So it was nice to bring that local history in along with that. So I want to just share a little bit with you, just to start with, and get you really sleepy and bored. So if you start nodding, just not do your neighbor here. But Harker's Island, in the historical records, was first known as Davers Island. Davers Island, and this was in 1624. A map was drawn by the Jamestown colonists. Okay, and I'm going beyond like the lost colony now. And there was a settler. His last name was Davers, Richard Davers, from the Jamestown colony, and they think they named it after him. So the first time he ever got a name was at that time. And of course, it was later known as Craney Island. The first occupants of the island was the Core Indians, C-O-R-E-E. I always want to say Coree, but I think it's pronounced Core, which is of the Algonquin family. Okay, a little tidbit here: Wanchese and Manio, not the places, but the people. They say Wanchese was a Harker's Islander.
Always heard that.
Had you heard that? All right. See, but I wanted to share. Not everybody may have heard it, but he was a Core Indian, and so he would, if he wasn't from Harker's Island, he at least visited there. All right. Sir Walter Raleigh's first expedition, which was in 1584, John White was the first one, and he was the guy who drew all the maps. We always see those in the history books of all the maps and all the watercolors. John White was the first one to draw a map which had Harker's Island on it, but he didn't name it. It was an island there, but it wasn't named at the time. Okay. The first land title was given to a guy by the name of Farnifold Green, and he had never moved there, but I was going to go to something else there, but then Ebenezer Harker's purchased it in 1730. He was the first one to settle on the island. He built a plantation and a boatyard, and after his death in 1762, it became known as Harker's Island. I went to and I got to go to my screenshots here because this was kind of neat there. Hold on. And I screenshot them so I wouldn't have to look them up. Because, when you want to look up something here, the internet don't work very well. Okay, I talked about Green. Green, in June 25th, 1709 now, sold the island to William Bryce for £5. They never saw the island, never moved there. On the very same day, sold it to Thomas Sparrow III for £10.
Yep.
So hey, land prices have been increasing for a long time. All right. Sparrow soon sold the island to Thomas Pollock, which was twice the governor of North Carolina. This is the colonial, provincial governor, the one with the crown there. But he sold it to him twice. Pollock didn't take up residence on the island, but several farm buildings were erected. And in 1720, it was leased to Captain Stone for £3 a year. Pollock's son George inherited the island from his father after his death in August 30th, 1722. George Pollock sold Craney Island. It was named Craney Island at the time to Ebenezer Harker in September 15th, 1730 for £400. It's going up along, and that's about 100 years or so, if you think about it. For £400, and I thought this was neat, and I've always heard this, but 120, and it's got in the Old English here, one boat 20-foot long with oar and mast. So 400-pound and a 20-foot skiff. So, and he was from Massachusetts, came here and he was into the whaling business, and he came to move to Harker's Island. So that was Ebenezer Harker here. Ebenezer Harker was the last sole owner. In 1752, he deeded, and I like this part, and I'll show you why. He deeded 10 acres as a wedding gift to his daughter, Hipsabeth. How about that name for an old name? And guess who she was marrying? Nathan Yeomans. See why I like that? She said, I'm Chris Yeomans, by the way. I didn't introduce myself. These are kind of interesting. 1762, at Ebenezer's death, his son Zachariah, he divided that island up into 3 parts. His son Zachariah got the western end. And if you think about it at the time, and I'm going to infer some stuff here, like I try to get my kids to do, just don't, read between the lines in the textbook, because there's reasons why people did what they did. So the western end of the island would have been more, I don't say valuable, but more desirable, because it was closer, in my opinion, and if you think about it, it was closer to Beaufort.
Inland.
If you did your goods and services in transit to Beaufort and Beaufort Inlet, right? If you lived to the eastern end, you got to go to Beaufort to do anything, So there's another 4 miles you had to go, not in your car with air conditioning, but in your sail skiff or pole skiff. What a trek for a day, So the western end. But anyway, Zachariah got the third half of the western third half of the island. Adult woman slave named Violet, V-I-L-E-T, Violet. Adult young female slave named Daisy, D-A-S-I-E. Okay. His son James, the eastern third, she got, and also an adult slave named Hague, H-A-G-U-E. A young man named Peter was what that son got. Ebenezer Jr. got the central third. He got a male slave named Jeffrey and a young male slave named Sutton. Hipsabeth, remember her? She had already got a wedding gift. Guess what she got when her daddy died? Anybody know? Do you remember from your history class? She got a bushel of corn. So, and then if you think back, remember I said he created a plantation and he built boats, not houses, but well, he probably did. But we can infer that corn was one of the crops that they grew on Harker's Island, and the fact that, and of course, where they learned to grow corn from, that was Algonquin Indians, the Core Indians. That's where they got that from. So anyway, we can infer that corn was one of the crops that they grew there. He did have another daughter named Sarah, and she got the female slave named Hope. And there was 2 other slaves that he wrote in his will, basically for the heirs to decide what to do with. And they were Badge, B-A-D-G-E, and Ben. He left those to the rest of the heirs. So I just think this is neat stuff. See, I get excited by this stuff. And y'all are not falling asleep yet. That's great. All right. Back to my phone here. I didn't know that there was a battle in the Revolutionary War on Harker's Island. Were you all aware of that? All right. And I got to go back to my screenshot here because I screenshot this, doing a little research last night. All right. Of course, Ebenezer Jr., it talks about him. He became sheriff of Cardiff County in 1752. Zachariah developed a salt works, so they were pretty profitable. 1706, the following year, Zachariah and his brothers became supporters of the American Revolution. Zachariah was appointed as one of 5 captains in the Cardiff Regiment fighting against the British. Harker's Island was involved in the Battle of Beaufort, North Carolina. Revolutionaries used... I hate when I do that. Hold on. I keep touching my screen. Revolutionaries used warehouse facilities on Harker's Island to store provisions sought by the British troops who had seized nearby the seat of Beaufort. 13 men guarded the stores on Harker's Island, probably led by Zachariah Harker, repulsed the British troops in a brief battle on April 12, 1782. April 12, 1782. We need to start reenacting
I'll
that.
say, what do you do about this?
The western end of the island. We'll go right there to where the Maxwells have that property,
it out.
and we'll do a battle there. But anyway, and I wrote this down. This was April. The battle was April 5th or April 6th, 1782. And if you remember from the history, I know every one of you do. Cornwallis, because the war wasn't doing good up north, came down in South Carolina, landed in Charleston, and started marching up with his troops and trying to rally because he had heard there were loyalists down here. Of course, he didn't know that Francis Marion, the swamp fox, was in South Carolina, and the beehive around where Charlotte is now. He ran into some difficulties, let's put it that way, with Nathaniel Greene and some other folks there. Or was it Richard Greene? My memory kind of served me wrong here. But I guess there was a battle in Beaufort. They took over Beaufort, and they went to steal their stuff back at Harker's Island. And like true Harker's Islanders, that kicked their ass. How about that? And the war ended at Yorktown, which was just not even a year later. September 3rd, 1783 was when Cornwallis surrendered to General Washington at Yorktown up in the Virginia Peninsula. Some of y'all probably visited there. So 1790, then we're moving back toward Harker's Island. That was a little brief history of it. 1790, the first census. 1790 was our first U.S. census. We're now the United States of America, just being birthed, right? There was 16 white people living on Harker's Island and 13 slaves. 1790. 1800, there were 26 white people, 16 slaves, and 7 others. And then they said on the other there, probably a mix or free slaves. Sometimes when people died, they would free their slaves. So that's what they assumed there. So jumping ahead about 64 years, 1864, after the Civil War, Miss Jenny Bell came and started the first school in Harker's Island at what I used to call Academy's Field. Now we'll talk about it later. And that was the Northern Methodist come down to educate us heathen Southerners. Think I'm joking, don't you? They came down missionaries. They said, "Oh, these people need some help. They talk funny, and we're gonna have to educate them." Every time I was in school, we had a new teacher, and they'd come in and phonetics. That was probably good. Phonics, phonics. Hooked on phonics. Really did good for me. I never understood how Pretty spelled pretty.
Pretty.
I mean, how does that? Purdy spells pretty. See, that's you understand what I'm saying now. How does FISH spell fish? It was a little confusing to me growing up on Harker's Island, but they just said that's the way it is. So anyway, first school, Miss Jenny Bell. 1865, there was a fish oil factory built, and it was stayed in operation until 1873. 1870, there was a milling facility, and if you go on the west end of the island,
I got a picture of it.
okay, the mill, the stone mill is still there. So on the Maxwell property on the western end of the island, milling facility, and a guy named I don't know, Lovie, Lovie Larson, and he had it on the west end. He was from Norway. Talk about dingbatters showing up at the island. He was from Norway.
And that goes back to Louis Larson and Joel's Craft.
There you go, the Larsons. There's a little saying about it's so hot that, no, that's the Lawrences.
That's the Larsons. They're the hot ones.
All right, okay. You ever heard that? It's so hot the Lawrences are dancing. It must have been really hot. I'm just saying, that's a saying there. All right. 1896 to 1899, hurricanes ran folk off the banks. Okay. William Henry Guthrie, 1897, was the first one to move from the banks, and he went over to the island and bought 64.5 acres. And we were talking earlier.
That's my great grandfather.
Is that right? See, 64 So it was that Red Hill stuff?
That's Red Hill. That's his father.
Right there.
Right there, Divine.
All right.
And I don't know for sure, but they think.
So William Henry Guthrie, this is his father, right?
This is his father.
Right, okay, all right. But anyway, 64.5 acres, and they were selling it for $1 an acre. We talked about people as they moved from the banks, the promised land, which is not far away here. They moved over here because that was cheap land. I found out at a Diamond City reunion that the expensive land at that time was by the railroad tracks. Nobody didn't want to live down there by the marsh. Mosquitoes, they take you over. You don't want to live down there.
That's what that probably.
You know, or Salter Path, the shortest distance between the Atlantic Ocean and Bogue Sound, the Rice Path. Who wants to live there? Gee, forever, you know? So anyway, how times have changed. And I never can say that hurricane. What's the 1899 hurricane?
San
I can say the sand part. The Sariaco, I can't quite get. Okay. Wiped out Diamond City. And at that time, 700 people was living in Diamond City. If you remember, what was the 1806 census? Let me try it again. 26 and 16, that's 42 and 7. Do my math there. That's what, 50, 49 in 1800. It probably wasn't much many in 1899. Probably 50 or so. The island all wooded up, people living along the shore. So there were 700 people living in Diamond City. Okay. 1902, according to them, looking it up here, the last resident left Diamond City, which is probably true. But I don't think the last residents left the banks at that time, because I got Joseph Lane Lewis, and I read somewhere in one of those books that you shared with me that it was somebody in the early 20th century that was walking the banks just to kind of see who was left, and he stayed over there. He was over there during the 33 storm. He was living there, which was down toward like Wade Shore area. That would have been down that way if you're familiar that way. And during the 33 storm, because he wouldn't leave, during the 33 storm, it got so bad before the inlet blew out, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, Barden's Inlet, that Banks was connected, that he went to the highest sand dune and tied himself to the tree because he thought that was the best way for him to find a body. And of course, the inlet washed away, and it's like they pulled the plug on the tub, and all the water started receding, and he survived it basically. So, and he's buried over on Shackford in that cemetery that we went to not too long ago. So, from 1895 to 1900, Harker's Island had grown from 13 extended families, and if you think about it, these were mostly family people here, to over 1,000 residents in 5 years. It was one of the largest communities in Carteret County by 1900. Harker's Island was, because of people moving from the banks. Then you get all this development. 1904, we got a post office. Okay,
hold on. Let's go through this.
Oh.
You haven't seen this, have you?
I looked through it. Okay. Yes. Right. So you want to?
Yeah. You hold it. You go. All
right. Because I'm almost done.
Well, okay. Go for it.
Well, I was going to go just real quick, and we'll see some pictures here. But 1926, the road was. It wasn't paved, but it was cut through the front road, is what we call it. I don't know what's the real name of it.
Front road.
All right. I know people say, I live on Jennifer Drive, and I'm like,
where the hell is that?
Where the hell is that? It's either front road or back,
Who lives there?
Jennifer Drive. Well, what part of, anyway, and we can kind of, but, it's either front road or back road or Easter or Wester or Ocam, anyway.
You have the list on the back of your shirt.
Yes, of the communities.
And so does Beth.
1936, the road was paved, okay, and that's when they used the Indian shell mound to the eastern end of the island. I just think about how many artifacts that they just paved over, that they used that as a way to pad the road, I guess you would say. 1941, the bridge. 33, we talked about Barden's Inlet opened up, and in 1936 it became Barden's Inlet. Representative Graham Barden pushed that through the North Carolina legislature. Had nothing to do that he had a house over the Cape, and that was an easier way to get to it. Just saying. Anyway, 1939, REA. That's what Grandma always called it, REA. You ever heard of the REA? Rural Electrification Association. Roosevelt era. All this, alphabet soup stuff from your, New Deal Depression studies in school. All right. They were the first, Harker Island was the first submarine electrical cable in the United States. It provided electricity to Harker Island, running from Lennoxville all the way to the island. First underground. I hope it was insulated real well, because if you're out there flounder gigging, happen to hit that there live wire, woo! You talk about lighting you up. You look like a glow stick. All right. 41, this is important. Cherry Point was built. World War II. Cherry Point was built. People could make a good wages living on Harker Island, 1941. All right. I thought I had a bridge in here somewhere. Oh, I did. 41, I skipped it. 41, the bridge was built, the first bridge. We're on our third bridge right now. You ever been across the high-rise bridge? Man. We need to put a toll gate to it. Anyway.
No, interesting.
Listen to this, 2000 census, and of course this is going to 2000 census. We already talked about it earlier. 1,525 people living on Harker Island in 2000. 2010, every 10 years, y'all know that. 1,207. And 2020, 1,127, 2020. So we'll see what happens in the 2030 census. But these are, I'm assuming let me try that again. Permanent residents?
Full-time residents.
Permanent residents.
Not houses.
Yeah, I heard someone tell me one time, it was about the mid-90s, where the REA, we'll call them then, was sending light bills. They were sending more light bills off the island to be paid than they were sending to local residents on the island. So that was in the mid-90s.
That's right.
I was sharing this earlier. We're talking about houses there. In Florida, they're having trouble with house prices, land, people buying up corporations. And they're trying to, I heard this on C-SPAN. I watch those geek channels like C-SPAN. And they are proposing that if you buy a house, that you have to live there permanently. Interesting concept.
In Florida?
Yeah, or one section of Florida. So if you buy houses in this, let's say, I don't know, Key West, just to try to keep housing prices down. That was one of their ways of maybe proposing that. So anyway,
Wow.
Any questions about Harker Island history? Anything come to mind? I ran out of note cards, so thank you all for putting up with it.
Okay,
I thought that was interesting though.
So let's go.
Hope you did too.
Okay, this is actually some of Joel Hancock, Linwood, Harker, Manley Gaskell. That was the whole gas. That's the only picture I know of the crowd moving stuff off the banks.
Oh.
And this is Red Hill, as far as I know. That's what Harker's Island's supposed to look like.
19 feet in elevation. I read that. 19 feet at the end of
For
Harker's Island.
Grandma was proud.
Yeah.
That's Shell Point. Madge loved this picture.
And that's the east end of Harker's Island. Some of y'all are not
Right across from the
familiar.
museum.
Yep.
There you go.
That's to the western. There's your grits mill. That was the Larson guy. I'm assuming that was his. If it wasn't, it was probably somebody's bought it from him. But the stone still exists. Matter of fact, I found it when we were doing that
Yep.
oyster race there. Well,
This is when they were setting the poles for electricity.
hooking it to the one that running underwater.
All those Parker Island people had 3 people.
That's a good question.
That is a good question. All I know is that Uncle Willie, a light pole fell on him and he broke both legs. That's why he was so bow-legged.
Really?
Yeah, and Joel may know. Joel helped me with some of these pictures. He may know some of these characters. You can probably blow it up and look at their...
I'd say that guy in that striped shirt yonder, he's from off.
Yeah, and there might have been some people from the mainland who came.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking, in Depression days, work was hard to find. So you went to the work didn't come to you. So interesting. Oh yeah.
This is the pet. That's Kelly Willis. That is Monty Willis, Augustus Craig, Patty Jean, Randy Taylor's. That was all their crowd.
And tell them what the pet did.
You tell them.
Oh.
You're in charge here. Go for it.
Oh, come on now. That was the mail boat that brought the mail. So, amongst other things, I'm pretty sure he'd used it for other things, but he had the, you might say, the contract to drag the mail from Beaufort and on down east, all the way to Ocracoke, matter of
Is
fact.
she pretty?
So,
Pretty good.
yeah. So you kind of, and you get the boat would stop at the end of the dock, going up to the, usually like somebody's fish house. Wasn't this Henry Willis's? Henry Davis's. Henry Davis's fish house.
Behind Fish Hook.
Yeah, so if you kind of picture where Fish Hook is. There's a little cemetery behind Fish Hook, and if you blink, you miss it, but it's some dead people buried there. And one of them is, yeah. One of them is Eugene B. Yeoman's. Hey, so I asked Daddy, I said, Daddy, who's Eugene B? He said, I have no clue. So then I put it on Facebook. Of course, Susan and Joe Hancock didn't chime in because they know everything. They say, that's your great-great-granddaddy. So I told Daddy, I said, there's your great-granddaddy back there, you didn't even know it. I said, didn't you ever talk? Because Eugene Kendall was his granddaddy, which is buried in Virgin Bay. So I said, you never talked to your granddaddy about who his scribe was and where they were? No. So that was, we rediscovered Eugene B. Married to, I want to say her, Sarah Chadwick. I think she was a Chadwick back there. And they're buried right there together. So. How'd it go? Is it Chadwick's? All right.
So Madge gave me this picture, and that lady with the hat on the left was her mother, Miss Pearl.
Like the left laughing there?
Yeah.
Okay.
With a big smile. I don't know who the others are,
Okay.
but she came to teach school.
Was that what the mailboat?
And that's a good assumption.
Yeah, they were on the mailboat.
But they would travel with people on there too. So if you need to get back to them from Beaufort or whatever, you would also hitch a ride on the mailboat. Yeah.
See, there's an Acock Bryan photo. I need to take a day or two or three. Maybe Beth can go with me and go through the archives of Acock Bryan and see how many pictures he did take when he was here. Because he shot for the News Times too. Beaufort News, didn't he? Beaufort News.
See, and I was thinking about my pictures growing up, and we just, and this is sad to say this, but we never went to the landing and took pictures of the shoreline because we took it for granted. I mean, we take pictures of Christmas time, of our silver Christmas trees with a little tri-colored lamp thing that spun around and shined through them. You remember those? We took pictures of all that crap. But we never went down like to the landing and took pictures of the net house that my granddaddy had and stuff like that. We never did that, thinking it was going to last forever. Little did we know.
And I don't even know what paper this came from. Internet's wonderful, but they're short on bibliography work. But I just love it. I mean, they stand. I wonder who's on the boat. I wonder who's on the dock. It reminds me of Smith Island when I go there, and the boat comes and goes. That's a Hugh Morton photo, and that's Suzanne, because her daddy was the postmaster.
Yeah.
Mr. Floyd.
And she was my first grade teacher.
This photo is in Hugh Morton's. There's a book like Greatest Photos of North Carolina, and when I was in Boone, I knew somebody who worked for Mr. Morton, and they called me. And that was back before cell phones. They called me at the museum, and it was one night I was there and answered the phone. Of course, Margaret, you know that. And Mr. Morton wanted to talk to Suzanne. So I got Suzanne to call Mr. Morton. That was pretty cool.
Got him hooked up, yeah.
Y'all know who Hugh Morton is, Grandfather Mountain.
Huh.
The original, and there is a photo somewhere. I didn't dig hard enough to find it, because the first ferry to Harker's Island came from Gloucester, and it landed down where else but the ferry dock road, which is the road that runs perpendicular on Harker's Island there at Fish Hook and where Captain's Choice and the theater was. That's ferry dock north and south, and then there's a ferry dock to Gloucester that's also named ferry dock. That's where the ferry came through.
So back in the day, that would have been the business district of Harker's Island.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah, it still is, yeah. Now there is, and I shouldn't even bring this up, but there is a story, there was a tragedy on the ferry
Okay, tell
that
me.
kind of pushed, but there was somebody getting on the ferry, they were from off and it was dark and everything. They ran off the end of the ferry, getting on there, ran off, and like several of them drowned in the car. And this is in the, I don't know, the late 20s maybe. And it kind of pushed for the need of a bridge, because, you know, I'm pretty sure it wasn't well lit down there and they didn't have the little people guiding you on. You just kind of, you know, drove on. I don't even know what the ferry, do we have a picture of the ferry?
Yeah, there is one somewhere.
Is there? I was wondering what that would look like. Because I kind of picture, you know, you always picture those flat bottom boats there on the Mississippi with a rope that you drag from one side to the other. I think it was better than that, but, you know, I kind of get that visual, you know.
Yeah, and when Barbara and I were doing that book, she had uncovered a story. I think that ferry picture might be in that book.
Okay, but there was a tragedy that kind of said, all right, that's enough. You know, there's several people drowned. You know.
Same as DOT now on the stoplight.
Pretty much.
Oh yeah.
But Daddy told me about a circus coming to Harker's Island.
Oh,
And it's set up down that Fair Dock Road where Vance Gillikin's boathouse was.
okay.
And they had elephants and everything.
Well, on Harker's
And I've
Island.
asked other people about it, and they said yes. David Yeoman's talked about it. Had monkeys and elephants. I don't know. In my next life, I'll figure out all this stuff.
Interesting. Wow. I did not know that.
Now we have a circus every weekend.
Look at there.
That was the bridge.
And I vaguely remember that bridge.
I remember it.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you met a school bus or a truck, you kind of waited on one side or the other.
Especially where the draw was.
Where the draw
It kind of
was.
went in, both sides.
And when the new bridge came and we were in the conversation about bridges, somebody told me that old lady Sparks, because they live over there, that she would stand, somebody in the Sparks crowd was like the bridge tender, and she would stand and hold, when the school buses would come, and hold the car so the school buses could get all the way across them.
Go there. Interesting. But this is a little, but Daddy was in a car with somebody, I know it's hard to believe, and they were racing, coming on the island.
Could have been Thomas Lee.
Might have been Thomas Lee. And he was in the passenger side, so you can kind of picture, you know, and as they got side by side, they had to come together by where the draw was. Daddy said he snatched his arm in so his arm wouldn't get pitched between the cars.
It's the truth.
That's how close they were, though. How crazy is that?
So that was from 41 until like the early 70s.
And this is all wood now. That's wood slats.
And there's decoys at the museum and in some collections that was made from the wood from that bridge. I tried to get wood off of the bridge they just tore down to get somebody to make some decoys out of, but it was all salt treated. Nobody wants to carve salt treated.
Yeah. But I noticed you do have the arms.
I went shoplifting.
Did you? I was thinking you stole them.
Yeah, well they told me to come get it.
You know, the arms that go down to stop
Yeah,
traffic?
I got that.
She's got them in the backyard after the museum one night.
And I ain't got to worry about nobody's because it's heavy. And I got the control panel and both signs. I got both of the
Okay,
signs
good.
and all that.
All right, nice.
That's Richard Arlen.
Man,
Look at the trees.
one of the prettiest cars ever built. That's just my opinion.
And that was the ferry. That's where the ferry dock was. That's down there at Ferry Dock Road.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody just had to build a boat down right. I guess he pulled her up. So,
Yeah, he's painting her. I know where that is. That's down Ferry Dock Road.
That's Mr. Benny's right there.
Yeah, and there's a store there,
Yep.
which is now like an Airbnb.
Right, it is. I don't know the date on this.
And see, I got to tell a story here.
That was the job, that was the plan.
Because I may even cry here. But I was coming around, I floated to the bridge in my fiberglass boat. Man, that's another story. My granddaddy had a plaque in his house. He said, if God wanted us to have fiberglass boats, he would have planted fiberglass trees.
Yep.
He didn't believe in fiberglass boats. And they were just coming out. This is like, late 70s. I say just coming out. Just being recognized as a boat on Harker's Island. Let's put it that way. You didn't go buy a boat, you built one. Who would go buy one when you could build it in your backyard? Anyway, and I came around.
David's car.
Well, I was on the end of the boat there, so I'd already floated. I was coming around Red Hill, Harker's Point, around Red Hill, Rush Point, and I looked down that's the front side of the island. All right, that's the front road you see there going down. That's why I said, what's the name of that? That's the front road. There's the road that was cut through in the 20s. All right, and I looked down the front side of the island, and just for that split second, I got that visual of those trawlers out there on the shore, and then up close, there's these pole skiff that you got to your trawler, and just for a moment, I got that visual, and I had to stop the boat, and I told Caroline, which is my daughter and my wife, she's from off, that's okay. I told her, what I had just visioned that they will never see. And I said, I visualized that. Because what I saw down the shore at that time was a couple of houseboats. Which is all great, but, and then boatless. But that's the shoreline that I remember growing up on Harker's Island. So, and I just got that visual. All right, that's enough of that. Move on.
Talk about change.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Juan Cheese, when he saw all these white people coming, he said, oh Lord, the island's ruined. They've taken all these shell mines and they've torn them down and they made a road out of them. What are they doing? Anyway, Juan
I
Cheese.
don't know where this is,
bless his
but maybe
heart.
that's Harker's Island. We could detect it, we could decipher it.
I would say that's the backside because there's some houses over across the way there.
Yeah, straits.
It looks like the bay or something there, yeah, straits.
But when we say fish house, that's what we think.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of Cap Stacy operation. The other things left of that is that piece, that cinder block wall.
That's to the eastern there,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's where Glenda.
Across from McVeigh's mom.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Okay, I'm with you now. I was like, where's that? Yep, I know right where it is now.
But that's the Captain Stacy fleet started on Harker's Island. They were commercial fishermen. I mean, Dave Yeoman told me this, that they were commercial fishermen and they started taking out charters in the fishing dock between fishing. Because crabs coming on the weekend and they were willing to pay, and so they took their money and took them fishing.
And they didn't have to clean or sell the fish.
That's right. And that's Charles Davis's store, which, as I understand it, was down on the shore behind Billy's.
Oh.
And Charles Davis that is Earl Davis's father.
I was going to say that. It had to be some Earl Davis kin. And son. Is that the son part?
I guess.
Well, Earl.
And I said I started to put a picture of the Dollar General here. All manner of useful articles, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a busy store though.
Look at it.
And Earl Davis married into, and I don't know how this goes either, but married into the Harker family from his wife, and he inherited back from on the backside of the island, back from Ferry Dock Road all the way to the eastern,
That's right.
where the museum is. I mean, all that was Earl Davis property. So that's how he come up with, or ended up being, Earl C. Davis Memorial Bridge and all the other things.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that a lot with the new bridge, because it's still named, because there was a question about when the new bridge came, would it still be the Earl Davis Bridge?
Right.
And the rule with DOT is that if you're replacing a bridge, the name goes with it. If it's a new bridge, or it had never been named, like the North River Bridge,
Oh, right,
was
yeah,
Jonathan's.
right. Henry Davis.
As Henry Davis says, it was on the corner where Captain's Choice was.
Yes.
I remember that store. Davises were prolific. I mean, they were everywhere, Davis.
And this is Wayne Davis's daddy.
Wayne Davis. That's right.
Decoy carver Wayne Davis. All right.
The Oddfellows Lodge, what I know about this building is it was the Oddfellows Lodge, which was like rotary, like kind of like a rotary kind of community. Like there was an Oddfellows Lodge to Atlantic, there was one everywhere, and it was kind of a municipal thing. And then it was the first location of the REA office.
Oh.
And then in World War II, it was a USO. And then it became the first theater.
Okay, on that corner there.
On that
I
corner.
was thinking.
There's the
Which
theater,
is that?
show house.
Now I remember that. In the 3rd grade, we walked down there to see Cinderella from Harker Elementary School. And I had to get permission because growing up in the Refuge Fellowship Church, we got to do a church one sometime.
I know.
Growing up in the Refuge Fellowship Church, going to the show was a sin. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. So I had to get permission. She's shaking her head no. We'll do that session later.
Well, we'll give you a footnote on that in a minute.
Oh, it was worldly. It was sinful. You know. Anyway, but I had to get permission from my parents and Grandma Myrtle.
Because the school
Going
knew.
to see Cinderella.
Because the school knew.
Yeah.
I bet the Methodists didn't have to have a permission.
Yeah, I had to get one though.
What became of that theater?
It burned.
I was wondering what happened to it. I knew it doesn't exist anymore.
Probably somebody put church burned it.
That was the more.
You know, that would have been the Christian thing to do, wouldn't it?
Okay.
So,
Yeah, Christian Harper's Honor burnt the Mormon place down. Nice.
Now, did they show regular run films there, or?
yeah, okay, so here's what I remember about the theater.
Oh.
It ran Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. It was owned by Alton Willis, who was Alton Hall Best's grandfather. Okay, he was Mormon. So all they served was Dr. Pepper and 7-Up. And to this day, when I eat popcorn, I have to have Dr. Pepper.
Because you can't have caffeine. That's bad for you.
I've never understood the concept. All right. But anyway, they were open Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And that's where I saw Sound of Music,
Well,
Going with the Wind. I mean,
well, I can predate you a little bit. My grandmother told me that when silent films were played there, that she, if you don't know Grandma Myrtle, she played the piano and was really good at it. Never, you know, she would, little sidebar here, but Dad, he sang in church and he'd bring her a record of somebody playing and singing. Now, songs she'd never heard. And by the time the first verse and the chorus started, she was playing it. That's how talented Grandma was. Anyway, with that said, she said she played for the silent theater, silent movies. And I said, Grandma, what'd you play? She said, I played the same song the whole time. And when the action got, going real, she'd play faster. She said, then when they started slowing down, she would slow down on that song and play real slow. Same song, the whole movie there. Just play it faster or slower.
and here, on a personal note, that's the first time I ever heard the Huckleberry Mudflap. Was at the theater.
As you know.
Because they would come at Christmas. Because Alton Willis and Store Bell owned it, and then they sold it to Jerry and Peggy Ann Guthrie.
That's when I remember.
And then at Christmas, the Mudflap would play there on Friday and Saturday night, like sometime between Christmas and stuff. And they would play Little Toy Trains. And to this day, whenever in the Christmas concerts that Clinton does and all that, if he knows I'm coming, they do little toy trains and little toy drums. I didn't care anything about Jimmy Amspacher at that point, but
I was going to ask you if you liked the drummer at the time.
I did. I mean, everybody. All I knew was Clinton and Claude Donnie.
If you thought he was cute, yeah.
But anyway, I mean, that's where the commoners could see the Mudflap, because the rest of the time they were to the beach, and I couldn't go there.
Yeah.
What would you guess the seating capacity in there was?
Well, the way it was there were 2-seaters down both the edges, And that's where you sat if you had a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I didn't sit that much. I sat mostly in the middle. And there was probably 8 chairs, 8 seats.
8 across the middle.
Across the middle.
Were they fixed chairs or?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and you would stick to the floor,
That was
because they never got clean. And there was probably...
Dr. Pepper sugar on the floor.
Dr. Pepper. And there was probably, I'd say 20 rows. It was a good sized room.
See, I went there that one time in the 3rd grade, and
Oh yeah, I mean the girls
didn't
would
go back.
go sit in the middle, and then the boys would come in and by the intermission everybody was paired off.
the next movie I went to was Officer and a Gentleman. That shows you how long that was. And I snuck in there. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody I was going.
Yeah, I mean it was an institution, and Daddy would come late, and when we got out, every time the show was over, Daddy would be there. All the cars would be there, and you would get in the car and home.
Yeah.
It was action, buddy. But there was a theater at Marshallburg, and there was a theater in Atlanta. So, anyway, that's the show house.
Yeah, there you go.
And right across the road was Fillmore's.
Which is now the Fish Hook, believe it or not. How crazy is that?
Do you remember Fillmore's?
I do, yes. Daddy wouldn't let me go there either.
There was a lot of sin on Harker's Island. And Fillmore's was a pool hall in the back.
They had pool where bad people hung out there that their parents didn't care for. That's what
That's
Daddy
right.
told me.
It was a tough place. And they had milkshakes. And the cups had it was those little Dixie cups with those little checks around. And Mabel was his wife, and they lived right behind it. They lived kind of sort of in it.
Oh, yeah.
So close.
Did you ever go to town you didn't see Fillmore or Mabel?
And tell them they drove. Tell them about Fillmore.
He drove, it was like a Cadillac about as long as this hallway, you know.
He was a great old
And he was a
man.
big fella, so the bottom half or third of the steering wheel he had cut out so he could get his belly in. It didn't quite
That's
make him
true.
big enough. Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
Fillmore.
That's Mr. Benny. I worked with him to Shell Point at the restaurant that went with the motel. You'll see that in a minute. But Mr. Benny told me that he invented hush puppies.
Oh, okay.
And his hands, he had this a long time, his hands, all the nerves in his fingers were dead because he could pick up fried shrimp or french fries right out of the deep fat fryer.
Oh.
Like 375.
Yeah, I mean, he could handle it. And I can see him get loading those plates.
Huh.
But I love Mr. Benny. He was, I guess, the first restaurant on the island.
Look, go back to that side of the picture. Look at what. No drunks at, I can't see the part at the bottom there. Oh, no drunks allowed. I like that. No drunks allowed. I just saw that.
Yep.
There you go.
I don't know where he come from or who he was kin to or nothing about him.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's Carl Lewis's store. That was right across from the Methodist Church. That was hot in World War II. It was a bowling alley, and they served beer in the back, and I barely remember that one time, and they had a counter at the front.
I don't remember the store open. I remember the building like that, closed up.
It's right across from the Methodist Church.
Yeah.
You don't know what year it is.
You know what year that picture was?
That picture there's probably early 80s, wasn't it? When did you say?
Yeah, because that first base is open.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What else? Gas prices?
Yeah, $1.05, yeah. That might have been even later than that, because I was thinking when I was in college, I went to Wilmington, UNC Wonderful, but 85 cents a gallon was, this was mid 80s. Yes, it might have been, Harker's Island gas would have been higher.
That's Perry's and RJ's originally, which was on the opposite corner of Fillmore's. That's where there was a tackle shop in that building. It was EB's. I'm sure you remember EB's.
Oh yeah, that's Denny's daddy, Denny and David.
That's right. That's on the corner there at the Ferry Dock.
But see, I remember Perry and RJ's and going there. Because Perry, was the pastor at Myrtle's church for a little while.
Right.
We'd go there after church, every Sunday night, and we'd eat and fellowship. It was fun. Rhoda and I always hung out.
Yep.
Letty.
It's Letty.
Miss Letty.
Okay, this was on Shell Point. Now, there was 2 restaurants down out. This is the crowd Dingbatter's and that, and Dingbatter's on the other one too.
This is right next to the harbor down there where the,
At the very end of the road. And that was part of the Park Service takeover.
because that's the road going to the end right there.
Uh-huh.
And then it's on the left, right next to the road.
Right on the edge. And see, that's the Park Service headquarters. And there was a restaurant that was painted that same color of turquoise that was right there on the harbor rather than right there on the end of the road.
Yep.
And Carl Lewis, who owned the bowling alley, is the one who built it. They owned it. It was Carl's. And the Myers bought it from them.
Yep.
Ron and Teal Myers.
Yep. I remember
And then
how
the Park Service took it.
because they can.
They took it.
So that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
They took it. They gave them money, but they gave them what they wanted to give them. And Miss Harker's was right across the road. She didn't give up easily, but they took that too. But that's down at headquarters. That's Brady's boathouse. And Ann Rose told me that that man there, that was Burgess Lewis.
And that's Houston and
Yeah, we'll get to him.
that
in a
crowd.
minute.
Yeah. All right.
And that's the Jean Dale that's to the museum now. Brady built her.
How do you make a piece of wood look like that? Isn't that crazy? That's just amazing.
Lots of little strips.
Town.
That's Uncle Stacy. And he was a brother to William Henry. And Divine was back in the beginning, was his father.
And that's to the western.
That's right across from Mom and Daddy's.
Yep.
And that was his house. This is how I remember it. That house, that's where Clifford and Trudy's house is behind that. That house, the front of it came from the banks. And he never had, all he had was a saw. And he then got an electric saw. And he hadn't had the saw but a month or two and cut 2 fingers off. I remember that. And they rushed it. Can't remember now who took it. It was Orlando Fire Rescue Squad.
Yeah.
It might have been Pete. I don't can't remember. Anyway, they took him to sea level bleeding to death. But he wasn't used to a saw.
See, as a little boy, you said that. As a little boy growing up on the island, I always was fearful of. I mean, these are things as you're a little younger, but like a fire. And we were on an island, and there was no fire department at the time. So when fire, where you going? You're going to run to the shore and stand there in the water somewhere, Or if something happened and you needed emergency care, there was no emergency. I mean, Beaufort
You
was
went
the
to college.
closest. Yeah.
College was the emergency.
Yeah. I mean, you fend for yourself. So there was always little fears in my little head at the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There he is again. That was his office there in that trailer. That was his boathouse. And that's Mr. Julian. That's Heber's uncle.
All right.
Look at that face.
Does favor him, doesn't he? Hawaii Tide Boat Works.
Mr. Julian, and he had the high tide boats in Williston that Randy bought and converted to Jarrett Bay Boat Works. And then Mr. Hugh, he was the first one on Harkezon to get the Heritage Award. And this is the Rose crowd.
Yeah.
And I don't know as much about them as I do the others, but that was Mr. Earl. I could always get them backwards.
But this is not the Roger crowd.
Brother.
That's James.
Yeah.
That's James. Okay, thank you.
All right.
That's James. And there's Mr. Earl.
Yeah.
And there's Eddie Willis's daddy, Peter. Because you're down there in Chinatown now.
Yep.
That's where Cape Lookout Marina and stuff is. That's where that boathouse was.
And the little joke on the island would be, that's Weldon's Peter.
That's Weldon's Peter. Right.
Just like that.
And there's more to that story. And there was Uh-huh, yeah. And that's George Long from Straits, who worked at that boat house.
On the left there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Earl was a fantastic locomotive,
Oh, my Lord, yeah.
Never had to have.
very talented.
I know. I remember going down there with Daddy. But they were, I mean, they were a tough bunch, baby.
Yeah.
And this is some more of that rose crowd. There's something about him that looks like Benjamin Brooks, but they were just random photos. I mean, like, they're out there in their yard. That's where they build her. She rained in her.
He see one day say, I think I'll build a 37-footer and just go in the yard and start building.
So they did.
Like no plans. Like, I'll put her together. Here's some wood over here. Let's put it together.
And there's numbers on the board.
Yeah.
I remember visiting Earl, and I got one pretty good, one Sunday afternoon, many years ago. And we were standing out in front of this shop talking, and a guy come up, a great big Oldsmobile Cadillac or something, had his sport coat on, said it's from Greensboro. And he admired Earl's boats and Greensboro's sport coat. And they, yeah. Said, you got any plans? Said, walking to the shop and Osha were closing down. But he kicked around and come up with a piece of plywood. Had one sketched out, said, how's this suit you? And that man's teeth almost fell out, but you ain't got no plans. You know,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do this? That's kind of people they were.
Well, and today, I got to share this, but today, Jamie Chadwick, I don't know if you're some of them here, but you go down there to his place today, and he don't have a plan, nowhere to be seen. He sketched something out, like you said, on a sheet of plywood. And of course, every time Wednesdays I do Meals on Wheels for some elderly down east, and every time I show up to Fish Hook, they've always prepared the meals. Jamie and his crew's coming there to eat. Of course, I said, you got that boat ready to go? We want to take a ride in her. No, we ain't putting her in the water today, you know. But he go down there to his shop sometime if you ever want a thrill, and he'll be more than happy to show you around. He just, it says, like putting a puzzle together, make you parts and just, I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah, well, there's a set of numbers that go.
I mean, it's a different mindset that they have that can
If
do
you want a certain length and you want a certain width, there's a set of numbers. And at the museum, we've got a door out of somebody's place that's got a set of numbers on it.
Oh, okay.
Now, Mr. Earl was where Governor Pyle's brother, do you remember that story? What's Governor Pyle's real name? Neighbors.
Jim Neighbors, yeah.
His brother went to Mr. Earl's, and I mean, it was the greatest time on the island's ever been. To build a yacht, whatever. And I can't remember what his first name was. But anyway, he was down there, and because the men, they kept watch. They might not have worked on her, but everybody knew what boats were being built on the island. And they kept watching. Anyway, she was fancy. I mean, she was, and every so many nights, Daddy would take me, we'd go down there and get on her and look at it. Well, that neighbor's man, Governor Paul's brother, owned a motorcycle business in Fayetteville. And the crowd on the island found out about it. This was Mark's generation.
Oh, okay.
And every boy young on Harker's Island that Christmas got a moped or a four-wheeler or something. There was the most tires on Harker's Island that Christmas that he had come and sold them cheap, whatever. But everybody remembers that boat being the moped.
I remember that Honda Express Mark got for Christmas.
Yep. But anyway, this is, when we're talking about Houston and Jamie's crowd, this is the house, that's the Mormon church right there.
Yeah, right in the back there.
And this lot is empty now. That's kind of the entrance to Fishing Center. But that was Mr. Burgess's and Miss Nora's house. And there was 900 cats under that. But anyway, that was them building a boat in the backyard. They finally got a couple of sheets of metal and made a roof over it. But that's where the Lewis brothers, that's where Houston and Jamie started. Was there in that backyard.
Let me tell you a quick one about Earl Rose. There was one boat, at least one boat, yacht, they put a piece of Formica in the bar, and rounded it, they come in, and when my company heard about it, they'd never able to do that. So they go send the film crew,
Really?
some of their people down, film it, and see how they do.
I wonder where that film is. That would be very cool.
Yeah.
They hadn't built any boats in that factory.
No.
Anyway, that's,
He was the one, if I remember the story right, that somebody come down and wanted a boat built, but wanted the cabin at a certain spot, because he only built pretty boats. And this guy wanted a cabin maybe farther aft or farther forward or whatever, and he's the one, he said she would be so ugly you couldn't even walk around her. I'm not building that. And they had that conversation back and forth, and finally, if I'm gonna build your boat, this is the way she's gonna be built, and that was the end of the
and
story.
Mr. Burgess, I remember he didn't, there was not much public relations to him. You either took it or you left it.
And the Harker's Islander didn't have clutches in it.
Oh no,
So when you push the button to start.
you starter, you're in gear, yeah. No reverse either.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, he
And
said,
this is the last boat. This is the Bobby D. That's the last rhinestone built on Harker's Island that Jamie built.
Yeah, 2 tons of
he said, I'm not building the ugly
They
boat.
run 2 tons of his life.
That was, I mean, that became an island. That boat is what got them the Heritage Award. And Jimmy and I went to Florida. Sebastian Inlet is where she's tied up. And I mean, she's a pretty rig.
Yeah.
Pretty rig. That was her sea trials right there. And that's them.
Yep.
Took them to Raleigh that night. The Heritage Awards, it's kind of like the Oscars, Emmys, and Golden Globes all wrapped together for Heritage Awards. And Mr. Julian was the first one down east to get it. Then Hayden Shannon got it, and Mr. Julian, and then Mr. Homer and Julian Hamilton got it for decoys. But they got it for boat building. And I had talked to Wayne Martin and all that, and I said, because I wanted to make sure it was going to happen before we got on this, got a lot started. But I didn't tell any of them what it meant. I just said, I need to get some stuff together, and I'm going to try to get y'all's, name out there, whatever. Well, they didn't care, and so I sent film crews down. We worked on it a year. Pictures, had a film crew out there on one of the Miss Charlotte that was tied up at Bradley Starr's fish house. And they put up with it, Anyway, when I got word that they had gotten it, I said, now what am I going to do? Because that crowd, they're not real keen on going to Raleigh.
And that's the facial expression you always
That's
get.
it. This is a good day. And so I went to Pearl. That's Jamie's wife. I went to Pearl because you can do more with Houston than you can Jamie. And I said, Pearl, they've got it. She says, well, what does that mean? I said, that means we got to dress them up and take them to Raleigh. She said, what do you mean? I said, we got to do it, Pearl. She said, well, I don't know. She said, you're going to have to handle that. I said, well, I was hoping you were going to handle it. But anyway, I went and told them, and they said, all right. And I said, well, will you come go to Raleigh? Well, then they started backing up. I said, well, there's money involved. And they said, well, can't they send us a check? That's what they said. I said, no, you've got to go get it. And then when I told them they had to go to the governor's mansion to eat, I almost lost them. But the crowd, the young ones rounded them up, and I ain't never been no prouder.
But when they heard they had stewed conchs, they said, we'll go.
No, but anyway, so part of the Heritage Awards, yeah, but Mr. Julian got the Heritage Award. Connie Mason and I hauled a sail skiff up there. And she didn't have no brake lights on her, so I had to follow her real close all the way to Raleigh with that sail skiff. There's all kinds of stories about that. Well, I said, no, I ain't gonna be able to get that, Jamie's boats in this auditorium, because the awards are, these awards were at Memorial Auditorium downtown in one of the side galleries. So I went up there to the harbor and I had Jimmy, we were trying to figure out who's got a boat that'll let us borrow it to take it to Raleigh for this. And Stephen Gaskell,
Oh, yeah. My Lady Pat.
Lady Pat, and he was excited, and Patsy was excited. And I had that picture here, I should have left it. But we went to Raleigh and pulled that, how long is she? 38, 37, something like that?
Probably a little less than that, probably upper 20s, yeah.
Yeah, well, she was downtown Raleigh, here we are. Memorial Auditorium, front yard.
Open bow, engine box, steering stick, and kind of get the picture there.
But he had to paint it, I mean, Stephen was into it.
Yeah.
And we set her up, and you ought to see the crowd. They'd walk around, it was like you brought a kangaroo or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was there, and they were the proudest.
Martian spaceship.
They were the proudest. And we let everybody up the stage down like Carmine and all that. And then they had to go up on the stage.
Oh my Lord.
Yes, it's tape. If you Google it, you can see the ceremony. And
My
they had
dear.
practiced. I mean, they were used to having people who were not used to being on stage.
What year was this, do you remember? It was a while ago, wasn't it?
It was May of 2017, I believe.
All right. Not that long ago.
Yeah, but it was a time. Now that's Burgess in the middle. When they were younger. And like I said, they didn't smile then either.
Nope, that was it.
And that boat there in the back, that was kind of like Lady Pat looked like.
Yeah.
And they're all over the internet. There's all this materials we put together, and is out there if you Google. And so here was my home team. What time is it? Almost time?
We're past time.
I'm sorry.
Nobody was asleep or nobody was complaining, so.
Anyway, that's Margaret and Madge and I and May. That was back in the museum on the left when we just had the education hall open. Madge, Margaret Ann's still living,
Yeah.
but they used to go stay to the lighthouse. And that's David Yeoman's. And I do love David Yeoman's. That's when we first opened, we were having school Yeoman's. And that's old man Ari.
Ari.
We had a parade for his 100th birthday.
IRA says Ari. I mean, come on now.
Sorry. he retired from the Coast Guard in 1956 and he collected on it until 102.
Yeah, they lost money on him.
Yep. And there's Ivy Scott, that's the boo shop man, the fiddle player. That picture on the left was taken, I think, she recorded, that's Jean Ritchie, who was a folklorist that was recorded for the Smithsonian or Library of Congress. And she recorded him singing the boo shop.
And that was Sue Scott's crowd that married Thomas Rose, which is Myrtle and Reva Pearl and
he's a rose.
all that crap.
He's a rose.
There's the jeans right there, the gene pool.
That's it. and on the 25th anniversary, we
Clint
released
Nelson.
that original recording, and we got all the roses together to sing.
Yeah, Clint Nelson, all that crowd. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's huge. And Joel has sent me some of these pictures, and that's Joel's daddy and his 7 brothers. To me, that's Harker's Island right there.
Yeah.
He looks like every Harker's Island I ever knew. And there's James Allen. And he got the Heritage Award too. Now he didn't have any problem going to Raleigh and dressing up and singing. And I mean, he loved it.
Hey.
And the day we sat down at the governor's mansion to have the dinner, and I was sitting beside him, and he was all frocked up, had them Western shirts on and stuff, and they were waiting on us, and linen table, it's real life china, the whole work. And he turned around to me, he said, "We ain't ugly, are we?" I said, "No, we're not." And this is, I keep going back to this. This is Mr. Irving Guthrie. This is a photograph and a story that was written by a man named Marcus Hepburn, who Sea Grant sent down there in the early 80s. And he did this wonderful interview with Mr. Irvin about Storm 33. And I think this quote says it all. It says, when the inlet broke open, Barton's Inlet broke open, because it was an island, not an inlet.
Yeah.
He said when the tide went out, the 20th century rushed in. And that's the truth.
The eastern end of the island became more desirable.
Everybody wanted a piece of Harker's Island.
Yep.
So that's Harker's Island as it was,
Yeah.
a piece of it.